Russia's president knows a thing or two about symbolism. His country reeling from the worst act of terror for decades. And in times like this, people need easy answers. But Putin's heavy hints about Ukraine, dismissed by most outsiders as bunk.
No, there is no whatsoever any evidence, and in fact what we know to be the case is that ISIS-K is actually, by all accounts, responsible for what happened.
Footage released by official ISIS channels appears to be genuine, too awful to show in full. But the same gun, the same men apparently found later in the aftermath. 4 of the alleged attackers bundled into court earlier today, as all weekend families waited and waited.
My wife and parents-in-law went to the concert. I haven't heard any information since then. I can't reach them.
How will all this play internally in Russia? And how will a Kremlin increasingly on a war footing respond? There have been hints for a while of a new wave of conscriptions and tougher domestic legislation, possibly bringing back the official death penalty. All of which will be noticed by a Moscow public that is so far largely sleeping through Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Mention terrorism in Russia like the apartment bombings in '99, and one can't avoid the conspiracy theories. In that case, unproven allegations. It was a setup by the Kremlin to support its war in Chechnya. Fast forward to 2024 and Ukraine. Given the Americans had warned of an imminent threat, what did the FSB know? And who else might want influence behind the scenes?
There is a group of people in Russia, well, let's call them, extreme fascists. I don't know how to call them, who think that the Russia should go much, much further into the military activity against Western countries. Moscow seems to be a very sleepy city. From their point of view, the country is involved in a major war against NATO countries and probably is preparing itself for the Third World War, while Moscow living as if nothing is happening and visiting concerts.
Outside Russia, the impact was immediate. Ukraine under renewed attack, President Zelensky furious at the finger being pointed at them.
It's obvious that Putin and other scumbags are just trying to find someone else to blame. Their methods are always the same. We've seen it all before. Destroyed buildings and shootings and explosions. They always look for someone to blame.
Meanwhile, the temperature cranks up. The Kyiv night sky lit up by tracer fire and reports they'd hit back, targeting Russian ships in the Black Sea. Day 760 of a war Putin started and can't afford to lose.
Kemi and Zerem. So what impact could the concert hall attack have on Ukraine? Well, earlier I spoke to the Ukrainian MP, Lesya Vasilenko, and I began by asking her what Ukraine is now expecting to happen.
Likely there's going to be a new wave of mobilization in Russia, meaning that more soldiers, more Russian men will be sent to the front lines to fight in Ukraine, and there will be further advances, and this will further Russia's aggression, possibly deeper into Ukraine. This attack, this terrorist attack in Russia, we believe is done by the hands of the Russian government. And for us in Ukraine, it's not a surprise. It was just a matter of time until...
Do you have any evidence for that?
It's an assumption, given that Russia has already had the experience of turning on its own people. In the 90s, there were several attacks, which were then proven to be once by the Russian government.
And when Putin says, as he initially did, this was the work of Ukraine, of course, that is the message that will be broadcast across Russia. What's the immediate effect of that, do you think?
Again, it's another piece of propaganda for a nation, 150 million Russian nation that has become used to living in the conditions of propaganda. I guess a lot of people might have been scared, might have received this message as a call to war. it's difficult to say what the Russian people really think. As you know very well, there has not been any independent surveys coming out from Russia. The numbers that we receive on any survey, we just have to assume that they are right. But independent and Russia are two words which do not go into the same sentence.
A simple, blunt question. Who's winning?
It's a difficult question. It's not a simple question. This war has not been going on for 2 years. We have marked in February a decade of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. When it comes to battles, I think we can only judge by battles. Some battles are won by Ukraine. Some, unfortunately, are taken by Russia. But the war continues, and the war will continue until justice is restored, and with that, international order is restored. The only way to do that is by restoring Ukraine's borders to its 1990 levels. The borders which were agreed by the whole of the international community when Ukraine regained its independence, including Russia.
And in order to do that, Kyiv, Ukraine needs the tap turned back on, doesn't it, for weapons?
It's vital, it's crucial. We need those weapons on the ground in Ukraine. Most of all, we need the West to also be aware of the fact that there is not enough weapons in the West, and that the production lines need to be restarted, and that the weapon manufacturing needs to be boosted, and that requires increased budget spending on defense and security. And although it might be a difficult decision for some countries to make, but it's the right decision given that we have a massive aggressor state in Europe waging war in Europe, and not about to stop.
And given what you just said, what happens if later this year the President of the United States is Donald Trump?
Ukraine at the moment is doing everything possible to keep the relationship going and the understanding both within the Democrats and the Republicans in the United States that Ukraine needs to win this, and that to do so, Ukraine needs the weapons. So we are hoping that regardless what decision the American people make and whom they elect as their next president, there will still be ongoing support for Ukraine.
Lesia Vasilenko, thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you, Lesia.